We have now launched the online Shockwave course. When I set the company up, which is over 12 years ago now, which is hard to believe, I was always about educating the clinicians as well, not just in terms of the technology. So when Dom Smith came to me with this idea of doing the Shockwave course, I was all for it. And Dom and Katie have done a fantastic job of putting it together. It's really impressive, really comprehensive. It is technology agnostic, so whatever system you're using will be able to help you with this. So it's a brilliant piece of work. The guys have done really well. So check it out and go to the link below and let us know what you think.
Hello, welcome. Today I am joined by Dan Howells, who's a physical performance and S&C coach. Dan, thank you for joining. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you. Thank you for having me, Andy.
Pleasure, pleasure. So I like your branded clothing that you've got on there. Talk to me about Collaborate Sports because I've looked into it and it does sound very interesting.
Yeah, so I've just finished some calls with some practitioners this morning, actually. So, my journey through high performance sport took me from working with athletes through different backgrounds, which was brilliant. But nowadays, I'm coaching coaches and working with practitioners. So it's personal development through mentorship and I guess guided discovery and support from myself. And so yeah, Collaborate Sports has different ventures. We've got free resources that each month we have interactive webinars. So we bring people like yourself, an expert in a field, and to come and talk about a specific topic. We invite people in for free from general public. They can sign up and join that interactive meeting, and we drive that much like a multidisciplinary team. We have everybody has a voice in it. We have the expert, myself, sharing the main content, but we have people contributing to discussion and challenging questions and sharing their ideas if it can add to the pot of ideas as such. So that's one element, and the other side of it is then mentorship specifically to individuals or mentorship in group formats. And so we have various different mentorships which are run across a certain model that Collaborate Sports runs, and we've been really consistent with this over the last 4 years, and it's great to see lots of different mentorship options coming up. But I'm really proud about the fact that we've been in it and we've stayed in it. Every 6 months we're taking on new cohorts, adding new mentorships to what we do, and we stay away from online courses. I think they have their place. I think they have a real power in learning, but it's only part of the way to learn. So we're very much about interaction and collaboration in learning and immersing yourself in your own personal development or topics and immersing yourself in ideas. But that requires discussion, collaboration, and ideas created from different perspectives, and that reflects exactly my experiences within high performance sport, which were driven through collaboration. So that's how the company was developed.
Yeah, it sounds great. I really love the point that you mentioned where, you as the person that is organizing it, presenting and an expert in the fields, you don't know all the answers. Not no one knows all the answers, and having people, even if it is some of the people that are being mentored in the program, ask some great questions that maybe you've not come across. And I fully believe that that's the learning environment that you should be putting yourself in.
Yeah, if you look at the last 4 or 5 years, which has been from the inception of Collaborate Sports, it was born off the back of COVID. Um, Not because there was a sudden necessity. I had the fortune of still being paid to work out in the States with the baseball team I was with, but I just recognized that these webinars were coming online all of a sudden. The virtual digital world was on an upshoot, and it gave people great access to information. But I didn't see people learning very well. And what I mean by that is that you can take an aspect or an element or a topic, extract key information, and have the ability to make sense of it relative to your world. But that little red dot at the top of a webinar recorded session really doesn't need people there. It could just be a pre-recorded session. And so I wanted to do something different. So everything we do is a meeting-based learning environment, not a webinar as such. We call them webinars just because it is that way inclined, but everybody has a seat at the table and it's a meeting as such, meeting of minds.
Yeah, I think it's really good, and I think mentorship is such a powerful thing, and getting yourself out of your environment. I'm in a business group where I'll go and meet people that aren't in our industry, but I found it so helpful being removed, fully immersed out of what you're doing day to day, not in the trappings of
Yeah.
emails, calls, WhatsApp, all of that stuff. because it is full on, isn't it? Whereas
Yeah.
getting out of it and in with fresh ideas, it's really exciting.
Yeah, and look, like the high performance environments I've been involved in are they're next job, next job, next job focused. I've got to just finish what I've done with an athlete. Now I've got to think about this afternoon, or I've got to think about tomorrow morning. And individuals, practitioners, unless you've got great leadership in that environment, you become a product of the system. That's not very good for shaping philosophies and approaches and principles. And even if that establishment organization don't do things in a certain way, doesn't mean you can't think differently. You go all in and support that vision, but it doesn't mean you can't expand your philosophies, principles, the way you'd like to do it if you had more freedom, because that's going to enable you in your next role. And I think that's where mentorship is really useful, because if with the right individuals who are being guided to think differently, challenged on what they're doing, and have the right mentor in place to do that, I think that's a really rich place to learn. And all the clients I work with, who are all physios, S&Cs, sports scientists, and sport coaching individuals, practitioners, they love it because it's a complete disconnect. It's private. It's personally driven. It's with them in mind. They can just stop thinking about their athletes all of a sudden and put themselves at the center of the learning. And we have great discussions. Just this morning, I've had two, one with an S&C high performance coach in Malaysia who works with Malaysian badminton. We invited another person in because I didn't have all the answers for this particular topic. And so I was able to create a real specific learning environment for that mentee. And we were talking about court-based transfer, so things that we're developing physically off the court onto the court, and how it might be perceived by coaches, and how to have conversations with coaches about bridging the gap between the physical and the technical. And then on another one, I've had a meeting with a physio and an S&C from a rugby team about jet lag management, and we've come up with how to modify what the research says, because in their world they can't get certain flights, they don't have certain equipment, they don't have certain time. So what can we do in the real world? And that's a big part of what I'm doing, is simplifying things for people. I make no bones about it that I'd love to simplify things, because that's how I got to where I got to, was just by making things simplified, and creating real world solutions, because the textbooks and the webinars that we do see are gold standard and too perfect. They're applicable in 2 to 3% of the world and its operations. So that's another thing we try to promote in the values that we have in what we do.
That sounds great. And I think the point you mentioned just there, it is really interesting, is that when you do go into conferences or anything else, people do tend to present normally on, look at how great this was, and I did this, and we got this result, and we've got the best injury record or whatever else, which is understandable. But I think it would be great if you had some people go and say, look, I don't know, I did this and it didn't work, or something like that. I'll actually get some vulnerability, which I feel like it isn't conducive in elite sport, because it's such a competitive world. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh yeah, I totally agree. I actually have a podcast that's on pause at the minute called the Performance Strategies and Stumbles podcast, and each 1 week is a strategy based episode from the guest, and the following week is the stumbles, all the mistakes they've made. And a lot of the feedback I've had is about that second episode from individuals. Now, naturally, when you look at the listening numbers, actually is really interesting. There's always a slightly higher number of people listening to the gold standard information that the expert is sharing, and a little bit of a drop off to the stumbles. And I think it should be the other way around, but that's naturally the way people are, is that some people don't like to admit mistakes. Some people don't like to tune into that. And I believe that that's somewhat naive, and I think that's counterproductive to individuals' development. And if you just listen to those guests open themselves up to vulnerability and share the quite big mistakes they've made, it's what's made them now. It's what's added to that strategies episode is the mistakes. And I certainly have made numerous, and I'm not shy about sharing them, because it's those experiences that give us reality or realization about why something does work, because we understand why something doesn't work. So yeah, big fan of mistakes, within obviously the constraints of safety and whatnot.
Yeah, no, definitely. And Like, what's your insights from the world of elite sport now? I'm in teams quite regularly, mainly football, just because they're the people that tend to have money to
Mm.
work with us on things. But I do sense that there's a lot of stress on the practitioners, and it's not an easy environment, and it doesn't seem to have got. It seems like it's getting more so over the years.
Yeah, I've always, I think there's stress, and we've got to ask the question of what has been placed on the individual themselves because they put themselves in that position, and what is forced on them externally. And that's, for me, I think the constraints or the sort of setup for elite sport is not conducive to certain things like having freedom and separating the social and personal life from the working life, and that's a shame. But I've always managed to create that disconnect, but that's come through choice, i.e., not hunting down jobs that I know are going to be 7 days a week, or upon taking a job, really setting out clear boundaries about that role. And I think as high performance practitioners, we're problem solvers, or that this world of high performance practitioners are naturally very good at problem solving. And as a result, they find a way. And because they find a way, they do above and beyond. And because they do above and beyond, the boundaries are not set. And then ultimately, it's a vicious cycle that 3 4 months, 3 4 years down the line, suddenly I'm stressed. Well, why are you stressed? Has this been placed on you and forced on you, or are you part of the problem? So I do think when I talk to practitioners about their own stresses and situations, a lot of it does come back to not knowing what they actually want. They they like the idea of working in sport. In fact, they love being involved in sport, but they forget the real purpose of a job, and that's to live a life you want to live, right? And I always say, come back to purpose, not the job. My purpose and why I love doing what I'm doing at the minute, and I'm not seeking full-time sport work and just do consultancy instead, and love working with the practitioners who are in sport, is that my purpose was always to help people. But I used to articulate that as my purpose was to work in elite sport and help elite athletes. It's like, no, I'm a problem solver and I love helping people meet their goals. Well, I can do that in numerous different places. And when people start to get a grip of that, they realize that actually their skills are transferable, and it doesn't have to be elite sport, but there's this elitism associated with it, which is a shame because it brings this do whatever it takes concept, which isn't great for health and great for longevity and sustainability, unfortunately. So you've got to find the right employers to thrive in sport for decades, which is rare when the pressures are on to win.
Yeah, no, I think it's a really interesting take on it, and yeah, it's certainly football is so high profile. Like you see Man United just in the news all the time, and medical departments included in that. So it's
Yeah.
there is the additional side of things like that. So like for you then, how did you get involved in the world of S&C in the first place?
Yeah, so an aspiring athlete. I played rugby to a pretty high standard as an academy player, and was just short of making it professionally. To be honest, played some semi-professional rugby, but quite quickly recognised the need to study. And I was really interested in what was only a sports science degree at the time, and so I did a sports science degree. No interest in S&C because I thought I knew it. I was a rugby player. I was lifting heavy weights. I was training really hard, and yeah, supplementing and eating copious amounts to put on muscle bulk. And I thought I had an understanding of what it was to become an elite athlete from the physical training point of view. So I was more interested in lab testing, had a real deep dive into physiology, and then went to the States as a graduate sports scientist. So all encompassing across biomechanics, sports science, S&C, nutrition, and recognized I knew nothing about S&C really. The way these guys were training with a very focused approach and reverse engineering the sport and looking at problem solving for the athletes, excuse me, and the different disciplines and the demands of eccentric load through skiing and isometric positions. 20 years ago, 22 years ago, made me go down the route of strength and conditioning, because I realized how much I didn't know. And then it was just about building my, I guess, portfolio of experiences. I worked at university to start with, and then I was lucky enough to go into the UK Institute of Sport, which was the EIS back then, and have a multi-sport role, which is quite rare now. I think they're mostly allocated to sports, before moving over to rugby and professional rugby and rugby sevens, and then eventually going over to baseball in the States for 3 years. So this development through my career was not necessarily something I was desperate to achieve. I didn't go hunting these things. I actually did focus on me and my development as a practitioner, and the rest just sort of happened by association, and I guess having a reasonable credibility behind what I was doing, and just doing the basics done well. I wasn't an expert in any area, just became a consistent coach, I think.
Well, yeah, sports science is so broad, isn't it? Like, it's absolutely massive. I studied sports science, and there is, once you've done it, it's like, well, what do you do? And genuinely, for most of it, was either you do absolutely nothing related to it, you be a PE teacher after a PGCE, you go and work in a gym, and there was a few people that went and did those things. But like, what were your aspirations then? So when you, whether you were in the US or just even doing your undergrad, did you have a vision of to what you expected the job was going to look like? Or career?
No, not at all. And I think, we'll talk about the sort of graduate initiatives later on that we've got going on. But the vision for me, I'll be honest, and I think this is a bit of a elephant in the room with higher education, is because I teach. I'm actually a lecturer now at university, and the students don't know what the real world is like. So I actually didn't know what having a job was going to be like. I didn't know what pension was. I didn't know what the normal number of hours a week was. I didn't know what like market value or minimum wage was. I was just going by the flow of it all. And I was like, okay, well, what's the next step? A job or an internship? So I just went down that route, and then work started to pop up from that. So I didn't have a big vision, but then nobody was actually asking me that. Back 22 years ago, my lecturers were not really challenging me, and we didn't have a careers focused arm to the university. So you were kind of left to yourself in that sense. I thought I wanted to just sort of like do some physiology work, lab work, because that was the only practical stuff I was doing in sports science. So just by association, I was like, well, I'll do some of that. I had no idea where to do it, literally no idea. So I kept looking at new things, and then eventually sports science role came up at the University of Brighton, which is where I'm actually lecturing again now. And I just was a sports scientist. I went in and just did broad physical testing, lab testing, S&C work, and then that made me think, okay, well, I'll do my UKCA whilst I'm doing this as well, and see where this takes me. And so so I didn't really try and predict it. Whereas a lot of people these days, I think, there's no social media back then, so you didn't know what was out there really, apart from a website with jobs. And now I think people are too fixated on that. You just made me reflect on it actually, and I had no fixation on what I wanted to do. I didn't know, and I was happy with that. I'd just see what happens. What I did know I wanted to do was not wing it and be a bum. So I was always trying to find ways. I did my PT qualification. I went and did some personal training, and I just sort of just tried to learn what I enjoyed and what I thought I was good at. But these days it seems like there's jobs put on a pedestal, and people jump to wanting to do that without thinking about learning about themselves first. And then you have misnomers. You have people who are trying to strive for jobs, and they haven't got the right skill sets or the right personalities for that job. They think they want an S&C coach, but they can't stand up in front of a group and command them. So I don't think I really had an idea. I just took my time to learn about my own strengths and skills and interests, to be honest.
Yeah, like, how do you, maybe we will touch on what you're doing now as well, but like, how do you support those people? Because I agree, you've gone to university, yes, that it's about life lessons and all of that. It certainly helped me from that perspective. It's also the academic side of things.
Yeah.
But as you say, you learn instantly in whatever role, even if you're going and working in a restaurant or something like that. Those skills are massively important to just be able to mature or develop, speak to people, whatever it is. So like, how do you think that can be improved for anyone, whether it's in sports science or not?
Yeah, I think you've got to recognize when a job is there to create other opportunities for you, first and foremost. I've had people I've mentored, for example, who I really admire, who were really interested in coaching. They say, I think I want to coach. And the only way they could try it is to get into volunteer positions and intern, like we know, it seems to be sort of the issue with the profession. But they would go and drive for Amazon or work in an Amazon warehouse for like the first half of the day. So like, 4 hours a day. And they'd do that. And then that would afford them the ability to go and coach in the evenings with academies. But in those roles, they were learning about how to work with people, how to take instructions, how to talk to people, or not do it. So either way, you see how it should be done, communication with one another, or you see how it shouldn't be done. You learn, but there's a lot of people trying to jump into that job that they want straight away, as opposed to thinking about it being an outcome through other jobs and other steps along the way. So I think people need guidance. I think people need to recognize that their skills are transferable, and I do think that's also another potential problem in higher education within maybe sports science, is where we promote everything through sport. We promote most of the opportunities as these amazing elite situations, working with elite teams or elite organizations using high level tech. You know, the tape measure and the broad jump has gone out the window. Well, that could be done in community clubs, community environments, after school clubs. It could be done in PT. Yeah, and so the elitism of I guess higher academics and higher education might be leading people down the wrong path. And I think we need to create realism for students as to the vast array of environments that these skills can be utilized. They don't have to be a complete copy and paste into what you're being taught. And I don't think that's happening. So I think that's something we need to be better with. Is the reality of the situation, really.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's something that I think about a lot. Is there some sort of, I mean, it is, so is the apprenticeship piece. I think that's
Mm.
actually really good. Is that you get people in and maybe some sort of rough association to what they're doing, maybe not though as well, and just working, doing something. You learn so much from it, both from we've got a student placement person now, and she's been great because she's really enthusiastic and she's learning a lot differently, maybe not better than she's in university.
Mm.
But it's different, isn't it? And it gives you different perspectives, which helps you mature and grow and develop.
Yeah, and what you've just described there is completely scalable through anybody's career, whether it's they're starting out or whether they're 20 years down the line. And this is also another element I don't think people are doing well enough, because the easy ride is just jumping online. The easy ride is looking at social media, but that gives limited to no context. I used to travel once a month or once or twice a month, depending on when I got sort of like time in lieu from work or when I had gaps in my schedule. I travel to people to see them coach and go and immerse myself into situations like you're describing there, which are placements. But I bring that to my own environment, and it was so good for my learning because I got to see context and see application at the same period of time. But now, because we've got this social aspect to learning with social media, people, I don't see that happening as much. I've had mentees that I've spoken to, and I said, I've created this opportunity for you. Oh, I was hoping for something a bit closer. I was like, come on, man, get on the road and go and show that because on one hand you say you want to work in elite football, on another hand you don't want to travel 3 hours to a cricket team to learn about elite sport. It's highly transferable. Um, so yeah, that's something that sort of I see it clearly differentiating people who are successful out of university or at any point in their career moving forward, and those that don't, because they're resistant to trying something or seeing something or going out of their comfort zone, So yeah, that's just something I thought.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, we've got a few experiences of that as well. You mentioned going to the States then. How did that opportunity happen?
Yeah, I mean, look, that was just curiosity. I didn't know going to the States was ever going to be an option. Again, I really have this. The university that I was at and the lecturers I had were great, but nobody was saying to me, these are all the different things you could be considering. There is that nowadays in higher education. There are placement, or sorry, there are careers advisors, etc., and careers departments. So I actually got to my master's, and I was all my data collection done was something like February or March, really early. And I was like, oh, now I've got to write it up. Let me have a look at what things I could do next. And I'd done a PT course, and so I started looking at PT jobs and found one online. And then I also found an internship at the US ski team based in Utah, and I just interviewed for it and got down to it. And they were like, "Well, look, if you can get yourself out here, um, then we'll have you. The place is yours." Um, and so then I was like, "Well, how do I do this?" And then so I had to go investigate what it would take to legally be an intern in the States. I had to get a J1 visa, which wasn't very much money at all for a student. I did that, and then I just did that PT work for 3, 4 months, absolutely crushed that to save money, and then got myself out there and just saw what happened. It was just a bit of an adventure. And yeah, that was it really. I just put myself in a really good position to interview well. The role suited my strengths, which was a generalist, a good generalist with all these different sports science areas. That's what they wanted. They didn't want a specific S&C coach at the time. And I seemed to get on well with them, and they offered it me. So yeah, but I guess it just came from being brave, trying things, and also not trying to force the future. I wasn't trying to force anything. It just seemed like the right thing came up at the right time because of my curiosity, I think. And just to go and investigate some things that weren't being presented to me, but were out there as opportunities. So I kind of created an opportunity for myself in that sense.
Yeah, and then you mentioned that you went back to the States as well for a few years. And like, what traits do you think that you learned from being in America? It's like we do some work there, and it's that the more I spend time with them, the more different I see that being to the UK, like from our perspective. But like, what did you find that experience to be like?
I found it to be a really proud environment. That everybody really wanted to do a great job, and there was little to no challenge about situations. So it would be very hierarchical, very respectful. So if I was to say, do this for me, that would get done. There was a proud element to everything they did in terms of being on time, how they dressed, the attention to detail when it came to gym setups, etc., things like that. The planning in terms of like a session design, in terms of like the things they wanted to do. But for every strength there is an overplay, which becomes then a weakness. And the same size of the two coin situation, on the flip of that would mean that there wouldn't be as much of a growth orientated environment unless it was led from the top. There was not enough there wasn't much curiosity at the bottom from developing practitioners because of this respect and this hierarchy. And I felt that was not sad, but I felt it took a lot then to get a voice out of people who were young coaches, because they were earning their stripes, which is probably literally an American phrase as such. So some great stuff there, some great people. But like anything, there's always two sides to the same coin when it came to strengths and benefits. The big benefit I saw was the money and the financial investment in sport organizations. So when you talk about sports science here, it's driven by people's curiosity and skill set. Over there, it is added to by the scale of which technology and analytics and data science and scouting can be utilized. So that was a vast difference. And what that brought was sometimes no excuses when it came to rehab. Like we could get any bit of tech and any bit of information. But when we go back to the original points about growth, challenge, curiosity, sometimes you had the right tech, but not the right minds to apply it. Whereas you could take away a ton of that tech and have somebody with a curious mind get more objective data through field tests or manual tests, etc., which would inform rehab better. So yeah, I saw both ends of the spectrum there. It's very, very different.
Yeah. So this was the Houston Astros you were at.
Baseball team, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And so, what was that like going from that environment of being in? You've done stuff in rugby, you've done stuff multi-sport there, but going into the MLB, how was
Yeah,
that transition?
transition was good because it was the right job for me, and they were the right employer for me at the time. And again, coming back to that stressful environment you talk about in sport, is that too many people, I believe, jump into a job without checking that it's right for them. And so moving to the States, I was massively focused on ensuring that that was the job for me. And funnily enough, 6 months in, I had a chat with my boss, who we had a good relationship, and he said, "You know what? When we hired you, it was a bit of a risk because we thought you were going to be a bit lazy." And I said, "Why?" He said, "Well, all your questions were about sort of time off and ability to manage your own schedule." And I was like, "Well, that was really important for me, because if I didn't have that, I wouldn't have come, because I'm bringing over my wife, I'm bringing over somebody who can't work, I need to be present. And I believe I can do a really good job by being very effective in my efficiency as well. I don't need to be there 40 hours or 60 hours as such. And I don't need to be first in and last out to lead." But yeah, making the transition was good because I was really clear about understanding why they wanted a person of my background potentially in the role. And I always come back to this when people talk to me about unfairness, that perceived unfairness when recruitment comes up and they feel like they didn't get a look in a job when they had the experiences and the credentials and I met all the essential criteria. And I say to those people that that's a HR thing. Really, jobs are vacant, and people need to fill them with a specific person with a specific skill set, because it's a specific problem they're trying to solve. An S&C coach job in one football club is a distinctly different problem solving role to another football role that's also called an S&C coach. And so it's right place, right time, really. And for this particular team, they needed to find somebody who could lead 13 coaches with a clear strategy and vision about physical development, because they were winning anyway, but they were winning without consistency in their physical development or an understanding of what they needed to do with their players across the next 4 or 5 years. And they wanted somebody who could understand load and could push physical development when the game has to be played every day. So making that transition was easier because I had the backing of the hiring managers and it fit into their strategic vision. So I had good clarity on that. Now, was that known by the people I came in to manage? No, it was not communicated as well. And so knowing what I knew, I had to take that into a certain leadership style in my first 6 months, which made things easier because I was a bit aware of that and had some good self-awareness of what perception of a rugby guy coming into an American sport would have amongst people who wanted the job themselves. Well, then I just played this smart approach, which was to learn from them, completely put the power in their hands in the first few months to help educate me and not dictate. And that got me quite far, I think, with trust and rapport. So whilst I learned the game, got to spend time learning the game. So I spent 6 months just absolutely immersing myself in every other staff member's experiences and wisdom.
What made you think? Why did you ask them why they did employ you? If they thought you were lazy with those questions, like
Yeah.
what was it about you that they wanted?
Well, they'd already decided they wanted to hire me. So those questions from me only came after a job offer. So there was a smart play on that as well. So they knew that from what I presented to them through interview, that I had the skills that they needed for this role, which really, if we look back on it, it was had an understanding of load tolerance and management, and how to look at being confident about dosing players with certain load and not worrying about games, because it was going to have a little effect in that game, but in rugby it would have, I guess, far more. In football it would have far more. So they were really happy with my ability to manage guys from a strength training, speed training, fitness training component, and how it linked into player development and what I'd say, I guess, physical KPIs and scouting KPIs. They were really interested in my approach to movement and not looking at sport as like baseball versus rugby, but looking at it as movement and actions. And that was really good for hitting and pitching in particular, because they saw those as isolated skills and very specific biomechanical movements. So when we got into like questions in the interview about that, I could relate that to strength diagnostics, and I could relate that to certain training prescriptions. And they needed somebody who could lead well. And so they were looking for someone that couldn't lead with an iron fist, but could empower coaches to potentially step into the role I had in the next 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years time. And yeah, I was confident with all those skills and presented well enough to get the job offer. Those questions that then put them at uncertainty were after the job offer, just to make sure it was the right job for me. Because I've heard it, people do it, they take a job and it's not what they expected. Well, who's that on? That's on you, that. And so I just wanted to make sure, damn sure, that it was the right role, and I'd have no regrets. Even if I failed, that I have no regrets that I tried.
Yeah. So when you're speaking to your mentees now, and so let's say someone is going for an opportunity for a team, and how do you establish if it is the right fit for you? Because for a lot of people, it may be that they're just, look, I just want to get some experience, I want to get into this. How do you balance all of that? And I know it's you're not going to have one generic answer for this one, but like what would your advice be for people?
Oh, I mean, it's pretty much the same every time. And that's you've got to stop for a moment and understand what it is you want in life and what you want in a job. Because you have the world's most amazing job, but never see anybody outside of work. And that might be absolutely fine. I know people who are like that, and I think that's brilliant, and I don't judge them for it, because they know themselves. Or you could have a job that's not fulfilling you in any way, but gives you everything you want outside of work. Okay, it's equally not useful. So I talk about needs and wants, personal and professional, and needs being nice to haves. Needs being non-negotiables, must-haves in a role, and nice to haves are the wants. Like they're aspirational. And so, yeah, when we went to the States, it was I need a job to excite me. I need a job to pay me my worth. It did that for the household. But I also, on a personal level, need that job to give me schedule flexibility, because my wife was coming out and couldn't work. I needed a job to help me see the world, but I also needed a job to help me have normal social ability and interaction. So weekends off, or a couple of days in a row hit off, and so on and so forth. So when you're really clear about what you need in your life and want, then you can be really clear about whether the job's the right one for you. The problem is job descriptions don't tell you any of that. So you have to go through the process, and people don't like to turn down jobs. And I've had numerous mentees reach out between sessions, just off the bat. They've been applying for jobs. They said, got the job offer here, I don't know what to do. And we get on the phone and we go over that process. And some of them go, yeah, I've got to take this opportunity. One recently had this notion of wanting to see the world and play cricket abroad, and another one of working in elite sport. And I said, well, you could play cricket socially at any point abroad, but this might be your only chance. So he put his weight in that corner, and then we went through the needs and wants and said, like, do you get your time that you want to play cricket locally? Yes, it's an academy role. Have you established the working schedule of the week? Yes. Does that fit your needs and wants? Yeah, and so on and so forth. And then I've had others that we've gone through that process, and they're like, yeah. And I'm saying, I know you don't want to hear this, but it sounds like it's not going to fit for you, and you don't want to hate a job because it doesn't give you the life you want to live outside. So yeah, it's just you've got to know what you want and know yourself really, really well. And the problem is we all compare each other to each other, and you shouldn't do that because there's some amazing coaches who work 60 to 80 hours a week because they absolutely thrive on it. It energizes them. And you got some people who are much happier with the 9-5. I had a student say this to me the other day. He was like, I don't think I want to do S&C. I just really love the 9-5 and because it stops at 5 and the rest of that time is mine. And I just see everybody else in these roles like take their work elsewhere with them. He said, I can't do it. I thought that was really mature for a 20-year-old, you know. So
Yeah, no, I think yes, it is a really good point because but it's a confident thing to do that, isn't it? And to actually
mm,
say, no, I'm not doing that because you can also get judged as you're not ambitious enough, you're not this, you're not that. Whereas it takes real confidence and maturity, even for
yeah,
someone who's not a student to do
yeah,
that. It's like even to someone who's really established, like you or me or something, to actually think, no,
yeah.
I'm not doing that.
I've I've done that since coming back from the States. Yeah, I didn't go for the States for that reason. It just was a new challenge. Um, I had an amazing job before that with England Rugby Sevens and the GB team, and it was Monday to Friday, really, apart from when we went on tour for 2 weeks. It was heavy, but you got your time back to yourself. So the pull in one direction was complemented by the ease off in the other direction and more time off. But coming back from the States, I've looked at very clearly about this, and there's, you know, a football club would be taking a punt on me from a rugby and baseball background for sure. A rugby clubs, there's only 10 in the country. Not many people from high performance roles in those teams are moving. The national teams, there's only 3 or 4. Those people aren't moving. So if I sat there and was like job dreaming, I'd be putting myself in a fail position, no win situation. So I started to look at that and go, well, what's my purpose? My purpose is to help people. And so loads of initiatives have set up, and we've even started a dog boarding business at home because it helps people. We help solve their problems and we get joy out of it because we love animals. So if we can earn money out of one of our passions, why wouldn't you? You know? Um, so yeah, it's just if you're working in a clinic or you're looking to build a clinic or you think you want your own practice, yeah, you don't want the stresses of conflict or management of people, then you're missing the point, you know? You've got to understand the whole piece of the puzzle, really. And
Yeah,
it starts with you and knowing what you deep down want
yeah.
and thrive from.
And also understanding that there's never a perfect role of anything, is there? There's always
Oh,
compromises that you're doing in anything in life.
yeah, the grass is not always greener. I keep telling a lot of mentees that is that they go, yeah, they get this job interview, they're really excited, and then when they get the job offer, it's it's no different. And then when they get into the weeds about what the job is, it's not as exciting. It's like, well, at least you know now, you know, you've got to go through that recognition. But if you ignore it for a badge or a status, that's a dangerous place to make a choice, in my opinion.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah.
And then, so yeah, talk to me about Future Ready.
Yeah, so Future Ready is a new initiative. It's sort of a subsidiary of Collaborate Sports. One of the things I noticed through the work I was doing was I was spending a lot of time engaging with people like yourself, established practitioners, and the developing practitioner. So I call it the emerging and the established practitioner, and then the entry level practitioner. And we'd have a load of the entry level practitioners come to these webinars, not in high proportion based on the attendee list, but they'd keep popping up, but I wouldn't see them invest their time in personal development beyond that. And it was because they had a real keenness to learn, but they didn't have the finances to invest in personal development. And as a result, I started to look in at how can we help these people. And so in numerous ways, I've had companies sponsor mentees before, and we've chosen graduates or people who are entry-level practitioners who maybe couldn't afford mentorship. And then I started looking into charitable cases and charitable donations and grants, and created a community interest company, which is called Future Ready. It's non-for-profit. And so everything that we get as a donation or a grant has to be reinvested in the business or the community side of the business, and the social enterprise being the clients. And that's really exciting because we can bring at the moment, we're just focusing on employability skills. So we're trying to target graduates as they leave university from their undergrad or masters. So sort of the June, July period or November, December period, where they might feel a little bit lonely and feel like they're a bit isolated, not got a job. Well, if we can provide you with a sponsored place through government grants or lottery funding, then we can give you an employability mentorship for 12 weeks. You get to spend 3 months with me trying to get you ready for either to recognize what type of work you want to do, how to understand what self-employment versus PAYE work looks like, what financial decisions you should think about investing in now in the sense of how much of your pension if you do get a job offer, but then it also interview skills, CV writing, LinkedIn, portfolio development, networking, and creating opportunities for yourself, all in this employability mentorship. If we can give people that for free, I'm going to be really excited to do that. So that's the aim of Future Ready. We've just launched it. If people want to donate, they can. I can send you a link to the footnotes of the show, and those donations will go towards practitioners of tomorrow, basically.
That's great. I think, well, it's everything that we've just talked about. That
Yeah.
is actually such a perfect fit for it, isn't it? Because I think that is so powerful to really you learn it in a week, in a day, massively.
Yeah.
So 3 months will really help.
Yeah, and look, no, again, I'm part of higher education at the moment, and they do a brilliant job of nailing all the fundamental underpinning science and skills needed and the types of assessments that develop your skills. But the moment an individual graduates, rightly so, that lecturer's job is to focus on the next cohort. And for me, I want to go, right, well, your transition now is into Future Ready if you're unemployed. So we target what we call NEET. So those are individuals not in employment, education, or training. And so that immediate period after graduating, if you don't have a role in sport, let's try and help you increase the chances of success of you landing one, or help you recognize that your skills are transferable in other places, and that sport might not come straight away, but it will come the second or third job down the line.
Yeah, no, it sounds great. Well, definitely big good luck with that. And then any other projects that you're working on? What's other things?
There's another project coming out in the next couple of weeks, relative to mentoring and supporting and coaching athletes, actually, and trying to bring what we're doing into the athlete space, not to replace anything that mental skills coaches would do or coaches themselves, but really focusing on the individual, not the athlete, and trying to help them navigate change, especially towards the end of their sporting career. So that will be called Game Plan, and we'll be looking to launch that in sort of April time. If this has gone out after that, then do check us out. And if you are an athlete listening, or you've got athletes that are struggling with not knowing what's next for them, that's what we aim to do, is help them find their purpose and understand what they really want to achieve as they navigate change, basically.
Very good. You've got a few projects on the go, as well as the pet one.
Yeah, the dog hotel, little dog hotel. We've got sausage dogs only, and people that know me laugh that I'm the S&C coach now with the sausage dog hotel, but it brings me a lot of joy. And like all these things, when you know what you want, you can chase things that create affordances for you. So just like that Amazon driving situation with that young athlete, a young coach, Amazon driving so he could coach in the evening. Actually, the dog business helps us, give us some flexibility and taking some risks with projects like Future Ready. So people don't realize that, actually, but that's a stable income now, that I can do something like Future Ready and see if we can make it work. So yeah, it's good all round.
Brilliant. That sounds good. Last
Nice one.
question. What would
Yeah.
you suggest? Like what advice, like really distilled information to give to anyone, but maybe some of those younger people that are coming through, just as to general life advice?
General life advice. Yeah, this is to everyone really, there's a few things. First thing is to don't dwell, right? People get too emotionally invested in mistakes or frustrations in their lives. And if you feel like you're taking it away from that environment, like taking it home with you, that's not useful. So don't dwell on things. And therefore, the next bit of advice is you've got to try and make sense of frustrations quite quickly. And the big thing here for practitioners, and it's come through mentorship, is reflective practice. And whether or not that needs a conversation with someone, it has to be unbiased as well. You can't just be ringing up a mate. But having a conversation with someone saying, look, are you seeing this from my point of view? Or am I not seeing something? What do you think? And deconstructing it so that you can take away an emotion from an action or a situation. That the first thing is recognizing I'm dwelling on it. And the next thing is to try and make sense of it. Because there's so much in this world that's dynamic. You know, you might have your clients who come in and they're not doing the sessions that you've asked them to do. But have you talked to that client about why? Is it because they don't understand, or is it because they're paper people, not WhatsApp people? When it comes to notes, I don't know. But yeah, don't dwell and use reflective practice as often as possible.
Brilliant. I definitely need to take that advice. So I will be doing so.
Reach out.
Yeah. Dan, really appreciate that. I've really enjoyed it. I've got loads of really interesting takeaways. So again, I feel like I've learned a lot from that myself. So appreciate your time and thanks for sharing.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it, Andy.